Hello, and welcome to another Alzheimer's Prevention Talks. I'm Dr. Doris Molina-Henry. I'm an associate professor of research neurology at USC's Alzheimer's Therapeutic Research Institute, and I am part of the APT Webstudy leadership team. On behalf of myself and the APT Webstudy team, I am so excited to present another APT Webstudy webinar. This is the second time we've convened APT Webstudy participants for a live event, and we are so grateful for your continued interest and participation in Alzheimer's research. Today's discussion has been driven by our amazing participant community, volunteers who are dedicated to helping us find ways to prevent Alzheimer's disease, as these are based on questions submitted during the first webinar. We received hundreds of questions from our engaged audience, but one topic that rose to the top was around blood biomarkers and recent FDA-approved Alzheimer's blood tests. So today we'll cover how Alzheimer's blood tests are used in clinical trials research, how participation in the APT Web Studies blood tests are used in clinical trials research, how participation in the APT Web Study can lead to further research opportunities, and examples of how the APT Web Study has contributed to scientific developments in Alzheimer's research. We will also leave time and room for questions from all who are here today. And before we dive in, we have a few programming notes. We will have a question and answer session at the end of the discussion. So feel free to share your questions in the Q&A box throughout the event. All questions will be anonymous to protect your confidentiality, and we hope to get to as many as we can. To use this function, click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you don't see it, you may have to click the More button on the right-hand side. Once you type in your question, don't forget to hit the Submit button to ensure our team receives your question. During the Q&A, we will be answering questions about this topic and Alzheimer's research at large. If you have any technical questions with your assessments or need any assistance with the APT Web Study, please reach out to our dedicated call center at 1-858-877-3135, and you'll be able to see that in the chat as well. Finally, we are recording this conversation for people who couldn't join us today. We will be following up with everyone who registered when this video is available. You are more than welcome to share this recording with friends, family, or anyone interested in participating in Alzheimer's research. And with that, I'd like to introduce you to our two speakers today. First, Dr. Reisa Sperling is a professor of neurology at Harvard Medical School and is the director of the Center for Alzheimer's Research and Treatment at the Brigham and Women's Hospital and Massachusetts General Hospital. She's a trailblazer in the research on the detection and treatment of Alzheimer's disease. Specifically, she leads groundbreaking prevention trials that target Alzheimer's in its earliest stages before symptoms are present. And I am elated to count her as a colleague and a mentor. Ms. Carol Turner is an Alzheimer's clinical trial participant. She, like many of you, are the MVPs of Alzheimer's disease research studies. It is her dedication and yours that allows us to make important progress that will allow us to change the course of Alzheimer's disease in the future. In addition to her own participation, Carol also works as an advocate to encourage better representation of individuals from communities often underrepresented in clinical trials and other studies. We are so grateful for your time. It is an honor to know you. And I want to thank you both for your time and for speaking with us today. Now, let's get to some questions. Dr. Carol and Dr. Sperling, I want to start by asking about your backgrounds and contributions to Alzheimer's research as a participant and as a researcher. Carol, can you share what your experience has been, what your experience has been like participating in Alzheimer's research, and what has motivated you to join, and what keeps you engaged? You are muted. There you go.
Thank you so much. My journey basically started with my dad in 2020 when he passed of Alzheimer's. In the process, my mom, being his caregiver, ended up with the MCI as well. And we were a little concerned because it was basically running rampant in our family. We were then, my brother and I both, introduced to a preventative research study, and we decided to actually get on board. And I've been on board now for almost 4 years, and it is a 4-year study. I felt it very important to get involved in a research study simply because not only my family, but I have friends as well who are very interested in the fact that they have elderly parents, and they also want to get help for themselves, making sure that they keep their brains and keep themselves as healthy. I think it's real important when you join studies that you not only just get involved in that part of it, but I've been privy to so many different areas, especially with researchers, being able to see exactly what's going on and just seeing the progress that's made. So that's like a plus with my being a participant. Also, with what's motivating me is the fact that I know that things are being done. I know that work is being done in the research world because of the travels I've made. And I'm hearing that more engagement is happening with participants in our community, which is a great thing because without that bridge, nothing can happen. Now, Dr. Sperling, may I call you Reisa?
Please call me Reisa. And if it's
Okay.
okay, I'll call you Carol because that was
It
very
definitely will be.
inspirational already to me hearing you speak.
This we'll be chatting. It's good that we get a little personal with each other. Now, can you tell me about yourself and what gives you the most hope right now in the field of Alzheimer's research?
Well, similar to you, Carol, I think what brought me into this field was also my family. My grandfather died of Alzheimer's disease, and then even when I was already working in Alzheimer's disease research, my father, his son died of Alzheimer's disease. So I've seen it up close and personal as you have, and I'm sure many of the people on this webinar have as well. But I'll say I trained in neurology and medicine because I was also fascinated by the brain and how we form memories and unfortunately how we lose them over time. And a lot of my career was spent first in trying to predict who might decline due to Alzheimer's disease. But I'd say about 15 years ago, I thought, oh, I really want to do something about it, not just be able to predict, but actually try to change the course, and especially as early as possible. So what really gives me incredible hope right now is that I think we've entered a new era in Alzheimer's disease. We have the first two approved treatments that we call disease modifying, meaning they can slow the underlying process in the brain for Alzheimer's disease. And in those studies, we've seen that the people who responded best are actually the people who started at the earliest stage or the least changes in their brain of the amyloid plaques and the tau tangles, I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute. And that really gives me hope that if we could start even earlier in the prevention trials that we work on and that you're so amazingly a part of, we might really one day be able to try to get closer to preventing dementia. I know today in particular, people are interested in the blood test. So maybe I can say a tiny bit about that because that is one of the things that I think is part of this new era and so exciting. We used to only be able to detect Alzheimer's disease after someone passed away by doing an autopsy. Then, about 20 years ago, we realized we could do PET imaging. This is a special kind of brain scan to be able to see these amyloid plaques and later tau tangles. And then, just about 3 years ago, people started to realize with fancy and more sensitive blood tests, we could detect evidence of amyloid and to some degree this other protein tau in the blood. And a couple months ago, the FDA approved the first if test, I will say blood test for Alzheimer's disease, although it's in a very specific circumstance, which maybe we can talk about a bit later.
I really am excited, Reisa.
Good.
As
We
am
all should
I.
be.
As am I. I want to thank you both for sharing because I know what you shared is vulnerable and personal, but I know that it probably resonates with all of the individuals that have volunteered to participate in any way or form in Alzheimer's disease research studies. We're all committed and have the same goal in mind. And it's exciting to see all these developments. And, Dr. Sperling, you kind of started an inch towards talking a little bit more about blood tests and how they are being used. Can you tell us how they're also being used in the context of research and how that might relate to the new FDA approved tests?
Absolutely. So just to be clear, right now, the FDA has approved a blood test that's really meant for people who already have clear signs of memory and thinking problems, either mild cognitive impairment or mild dementia. And these blood tests can really tell us whether that process is likely due to Alzheimer's disease or not. So if the blood test is negative in somebody who already really has clear symptoms, it's unlikely that Alzheimer's disease is causing it. The way we're using these blood tests right now in research is really to help us identify people at even earlier stages, people who don't yet have memory problems, trying to understand how to predict who might develop memory problems in the future and to understand some of the other factors that might interact with that blood test evidence of Alzheimer's disease, to teach us who, again, is at the highest risk for developing dementia, meaning progressive problems with memory and thinking that's pretty severe, really affecting people's daily life, and the earlier stage of mild cognitive impairment, where people have some problems but often can be independent. So these blood tests, again, there's one approved, but I will say there are multiple tests coming. And right now, you can't just walk to your CVS and get a blood test or something like you can get a test for COVID or other things. But they are available at specialist offices to be ordered, again, for people right now who have clear memory problems or dementia. We do not, and I'll say this again because I know most of the people on this webinar, fortunately, are not already suffering from severe symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, but we don't recommend that people who are worried or who are still pretty normal go out and try to get a blood test, because we need to learn more about what these blood tests mean in people who don't yet have symptoms. But our goal is ultimately to find the people who are unfortunately at increased risk to develop problems, to try to treat them as soon as possible in future both prevention trials, and if these trials work, ultimately to be able to provide them treatments. But we need a lot of work to understand at an individual level what this blood test means for somebody who doesn't yet clearly have those symptoms.
That's terrific. It's exciting. I'm thrilled to always be a part of that work as well and see all of these developments. And I'd like to slightly shift, but not completely step away from that conversation, but in the context of what you're describing as us learning how to identify earlier and earlier what are indicators that someone may develop cognitive decline over time. Can we talk a little bit about cognitive assessments that are also under development at the same time with this in mind? The APT Webstudy in particular recently introduced a new assessment called the branch assessment. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that test measures and how it's being used in APT?
Absolutely. Well, as Carol can tell you, in current trials, we typically do our testing with people using pencil and paper methods. And although those tests are very sensitive, they can take a long time. And of course, they can take a longer time to see change, because most people really do very well on them at the beginning. And again, our hope is treatments will keep that well. But we wanted to develop tests where we could see signs in a much shorter time frame. So my colleagues at the Brigham and Women's Hospital developed a test that most people can take on their smartphone, where we actually look at the learning curves, meaning we show people some faces and names, grocery prices, and some road signs, and we say, we want you to remember these, and we test them that first day. But most importantly, we test them on day 2 and day 3 and day 4 and 5. And even within the 3 or 4 days, that learning curve, how people do the next day, remembering it, is really very indicative of whether people are having amyloid buildup or tau buildup. And now we already have some data that it can predict who's most at risk for decline within the next 1 to 2 years. So we are very excited, in particular in that APT web study, and many of you I know have already signed up and done this to see how this works in a large group, to see how it works in people across all walks of life. And eventually, we hope to bring these into prevention trials. So again, we could say, if we suck all the amyloid out of the brain, or we change the tau, or we help vascular disease, do we make the brain work better and not have to take 3 or 4 years to always be able to get our answers?
And you know what, Risa,
Yeah.
that is so amazing. Simply because, just like you said, I am a participant, a fellow test taker. And that gives someone, if they're at their home, they're more relaxed. They're not like bothered about a lot of things that I might be a little concerned about in a lab.
Mhm.
So it really gives way for probably a cleaner too evaluation of an individual. They're not stressed out, and they just feel more comfortable doing it that way. And just to think that that is what we have now is amazing.
Well, I'm so glad to hear you say that because I do think that's an aspect. And again, I want to just highlight why the APT web study is so important, because being able to develop and test these kind of new methods in this kind of an environment is how we get there. Otherwise, it might take us 10 years to be able to just do this in the way by going just site to site. And I do, as we try to move earlier and earlier in treating Alzheimer's disease, preventing dementia, it's going to be more important that we can do things with people in their homes, that they can, go to places and get their blood test around the corner rather than always having to go to sites, that they can, again, do cognitive testing, as you said, in the comfort of their home. And also, again, we could never have people come to our clinic every day for 5 or 7 days and do this
Mhm.
testing. So the idea that we can do repeated testing through the smartphone is really how we can gain a lot more information than we can on these one-time points every few months.
And when you stay involved in things like the APT web study, you get referred to other trials. So that's why it's always good to stay engaged, stay where you can get all the information that you need. And clinical trials are always good to be a part of. In the underrepresented community, there are a lot of things that are, that may go on in reference to things that happened in the past. We have to understand that things have changed drastically, and there's so many safeguards. I experienced that myself in the trial that I'm in. It's so many safeguards that make me feel comfortable, and it's always someone there to guide me along if I need that. And as long as that engagement stays there, I think our participation community would grow. It has to be that kind of comfort level.
I'm so happy to hear you say that, Carol. That really is what we want. And I agree that I think things have changed dramatically for the better. And also say that, clinical trials, it's a lot to ask of people, I know, for a long time. On the other hand, you get watched more closely in a clinical trial to make sure you're okay than any other
Mhm.
time. But I think that trust is important, the relationship that people build with their site. And I know you have a fantastic site with people you get to know. And, to some degree, at least I always love when people come to our site and say it's part of their family. They feel like part of the family. And that's a mutual thing back and forth. So I'm so happy to hear you say that. And again, that longitudinal or long-term involvement is so important because especially as we move earlier in the disease, it does take a longer time to see what happens to people. So we realize it's a big commitment, but we hope people will be in the APT study for years. And as trial opportunities come, that's right for them. We can help people find out if that's something they're interested in. So I'm so happy to hear you're having a good experience, Carol.
Yeah.
I have to say, for both of you, I cannot thank you enough for sharing your experiences and your expertise. And I hope it resonates with those who are listening today and that we can convey the excitement that we have, but the also the excitement that you have in terms of the partnerships that we have between us and our participants. We do feel wholeheartedly that we as a community, only as a community, can proceed and make a difference and change the course of this disease. So it's exciting to be a part of this. We welcome you if you're still on the fence, if you're contemplating participating. We've shared the QR code. We will share the link throughout this webinar and share with you any opportunity to get engaged and participate. And we will continue to provide you with updates on how you can become more involved when it's suitable for you. With that, I want to take us into our Q&A session. I'd like to open it up for questions from those that are been attentively listening. I see a lot of questions coming through at this time, and I am so sorry that we may not be able to get to all of them. Some of them we try to be sensitive just to make sure and preserve your confidentiality, and others we will hope to try and consolidate and provide answers to these questions that we can share with you through the APT web study and through your profile. And with that, where can we go? For Dr. Sperling. So there has been some recent news that some of the populations with the highest risk for Alzheimer's disease remain greatly underrepresented in clinical trials because participants from these high-risk groups are less likely to have elevated amyloid in the brain. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I'll say that you, Dr. Henry Doris, are one of the world's experts in this, but I do think we've learned a lot in the past few years, but there's more we need to learn. So as Carol was saying, it's really, I think for a long time, we didn't have good representation of people across not only race and ethnicity, but all types of ways of people are defined diverse and in terms of diversity. And I think it's only recently in the past few years that we have hopefully regained trust and had broad representation in these studies. But one of the first things that popped up was that even though, in particular, Black or African American individuals and people who identify as Latino or Hispanic are at greater risk for developing memory problems, cognitive impairment, or dementia, across multiple studies now, it looks like there are lower levels of amyloid biomarkers or imaging in particular. And I have to say that was a bit of a surprise in the beginning, but now it's been clear across multiple studies that that's the case. Now, I think, again, Dr. Melina Henry is going to work to figure that out because there might be lots of reasons. But one possibility that is there is that for people who come from communities of color, there are more contributing factors to why they might be at risk for dementia. In particular, people talk about cerebral vascular disease, heart disease, strokes, but also metabolic. There, unfortunately, diabetes is higher in some populations as well. So it could be that it's more likely, big word, but multifactorial, meaning multiple things contribute to cognitive decline in some communities. But to me, that's an incredible opportunity with these blood tests and these prevention trials, because hopefully we will have combination trials where we can treat people for what they need, especially working us to treat. But I think we need a lot more work on this. This is something important that I really hope the APT web study will contribute to. Because again, following people who come from more diverse communities longitudinally over time, we can actually learn, is the rate of change on these blood tests similar across communities? Is this something that's different at when we first test somebody, or something that's really different over years? But I think it's really important. You know, we want treatments that prevent dementia in everybody, and we may have to do it with different combinations of treatments as we go.
That is excellent, and thank you, Reisa,
I don't know,
for
Carol, do
sharing
you have
that.
any, sorry, I'll
Oh,
ask Carol whether she has
well,
any thoughts on.
I have some thoughts for her. I was going to ask her too.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about the fact that the APT web study is going to make people more comfortable and allow them the ability to probably feel a little bit better about responding to their condition. You know, you see what I'm saying? A lot of people are real personal in my community with that, and they don't want to, they may not want to go in like I do. You know, they may not want that kind of environment. So that will also give way to that, and probably more participants.
Yeah, that's terrific. And thank you for sharing that, Carol, because I was going to ask your thoughts in that regard as well. And I have to emphasize that we would not know what we know, and we would not learn what we are learning if it wasn't for the contributions of the many individuals that heard the call to action and decided to just become dedicated and took up on this cause as well, to engage in these studies because they wanted to see a difference made in their communities now and in the future. And with that, Carol, I am curious as to why you're passionate, and if you could share those thoughts. I know you've shared a little bit about your background and you've given us a flavor of what motivates you, but even that, as an advocate in some communities and some participant communities, how does your interfacing these two worlds, both as a participant, but as someone who connects directly with investigators, is able to bridge that and convey that passion and excitement to other individuals that you're close to?
Well, you know what? I didn't know all of this was even going to come about in reference to my participation and the avenues that I've been privy to, and also the individuals, the researchers. When I go, when I'm presenting on a panel in front of researchers, which I've never ever done, like I've never ever been in a study. It gives you a lot of more focus, and it also tells you or shows you that there are people out there actually working for me and for the community. And you wouldn't know that unless you get involved. And I wouldn't have known that. If the study that I participated in wasn't put in my lap, I would never have ventured out into where I am now. I was given an invite into the Alzheimer's conference in Toronto for the first time I was there. I mean, it was information overload, but it was good information. And the thing about it is, there wasn't anything that you would have had a question about that you couldn't get the answer to there. And if you couldn't get it there, you were provided an avenue for it later. So being a participant does not only mean that you are actually participating in a study, but you have other ways of getting into the organization, or really finding out what's being done for me, what's being done for my family. And it's so totally different than it has ever been, with all the old myths and things like that. And we need to kind of get away from that kind of stuff, especially in my community, because we are dying from this disease, and it's not good at all. We know people that are dying from the disease, which is different. So to be able to even share some of this information with my friends and with my family in reference to, hey, you need to get out and do more things. You need to eat better. You need to do more with your brain. I know my mom would tell me, Mom, you gotta get active. Here's a puzzle book, here's a this, here's a that. So it's very important that you keep your brain active, keep your personal self active to combat this disease. No, they don't know what the cure is right now, but I really believe that we're closer than we really think. As long as we keep the funding going, we'll be all right.
That's great. And I think that's an important point. And I don't know if Reisa, you would speak a little bit to that, related to funding and just some of the assurances that we will continue. We are persevering. We will continue through this, and the science continues, and the hard work continues towards this. So could you chime in on that?
Absolutely. So, it's definitely been a little bit of a roller coaster ride time in our world right now, particularly about research funding. I went to the United States Senate 2 weeks ago. I'm going to our own state house in Massachusetts next week. I think it's really important that we say we've made so much progress in Alzheimer's disease. Now is the time to double down, triple down, not pull back. And the good news is that I think some of that's been heard. So we did just get some very important NIH funding for some of our studies. But I will say, as Doris said, nothing is going to stop us. So it is written on the wall of my office. Remember the reason you do the research. And no matter what, we are going to continue because Alzheimer's disease is too important. No administration, no time should stop this progress because, again, millions of people's lives are at risk. So we're determined, but I do want to say, even more than the funding, it is people like you, Carol, and people on this webinar who are the most important, I'll say, currency of research because we cannot get answers without people's willingness and dedication to partner with us. And I am so grateful. You said you're nervous when you talk in front of investigators. I have to tell you, I was a little bit nervous talking to participants because you are the most important audience I have of people who really can make a difference for us being able to get answers faster and again, hopefully bring treatments to everybody who needs them.
Well, let me tell you, Reisa, in my travels, I've noticed that there is a lot of talk around community participant engagement, um, unlike when I first came into the study. So I'm very, very grateful to even hear that because, we think of researchers as the people in the behind the wall and the ones that know more than we know, and the language is like over here. But it's a good thing. It's a good thing that we're because our community is where it really that's where the engagement needs to happen. Because without us,
Can't do it.
can't do it.
Yeah.
So we need to get it. We need to get it together, and it is happening. It is happening.
With you, for you. So can we go back to a little bit of the science as well? And I'm curious. Well, we have an audience question in particular around, again, the biomarkers, both blood and PET, and how do they differ and how predictive the blood tests really are. And maybe we can put that in the context of PET scans, if you would, which have been the reference for years, established references for years.
Absolutely. So let me even step back a bit because there's probably people on this call who are going, what is she talking about, that amyloid stuff? So let me even start back there because what we do know now is that years before people develop memory problems and dementia due to Alzheimer's disease, they have changes in their brains. And one of the first things that happens is this accumulation or kind of gunk up, I'll say, of this protein that we call amyloid. And probably everyone on here has heard about plaques. Again, there's plaques in your heart, there's plaques in your teeth. Well, brain plaques are made up of this protein called amyloid. And in PET scans, we've known now for, again, over 20 years that using a special dye with a special kind of brain scan, you can see evidence of those plaques on a brain scan that really correlates, goes very well with what you could see at autopsy in terms of these amyloid plaque buildup. Another change in the brain happens in the nerve cells. This is something you might have heard of called tau or tangles. And I will say we don't fully understand as much as we'd like to the relationship between the amyloid plaques and the tau tangles, except we know they go together. And to get dementia or real memory problems due to Alzheimer's disease, you need to have both. So the blood test, the one that's first been approved and the one that's really the best with all of the 18 to come, actually measures something you may have heard of called phosphorylated tau 217. Well, who knows what that is? Well, it actually turns out that's a change in the brain that happens right around those amyloid plaques very early. And I think what's exciting is that blood test is pretty sensitive to that buildup of amyloid plaque and also tells you that the amyloid's bothering the tau and makes it more likely that people will develop tangles. The blood tests are not perfect. I will say they overall predict about 90% accuracy for whether somebody's got a lot of amyloid buildup in their brain or not. That accuracy depends a little bit on whether you already have a lot of symptoms or whether you're 20 years away from developing symptoms, but it's pretty good. And as a blood test in medicine, it's amazing that we have a blood test that could tell us with about 90% accuracy about amyloid in the brain. But one important thing I'll say is that having amyloid in your brain does not absolutely say whether someone will progress to develop the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. We know that having more of this abnormality or a higher level of abnormality in this blood test is a predictor of who will come. But again, part of why we need these studies like the APT Web study is to get to a level of understanding that at an individual level. So we can one day say to somebody, okay, you're 63, you have this level of blood test abnormality. What is your risk in 5 years or in 10 years? And that's exactly the kind of things we hope to be doing in these studies.
That is excellent. Can you speak a little bit more to the accessibility of these tests in the future, or what your thoughts are for that in the future?
Well, again, right now, if you know somebody who has dementia or significant mild cognitive impairment, people can go to their doctor and in the process of figuring out what is causing their memory problems, that doctor may order a blood test or a PET scan. Um, Right now, again, we don't recommend that people who don't yet have symptoms, even though they might be concerned, and I believe me, understand that concern in my own family. We don't recommend that people get these blood tests when they don't yet have symptoms, because again, we don't yet know what that means for a given person. We do, though, often, especially as the APT web study, if somebody wants to be in a clinical trial, as Carol, I'm sure, can tell you, one of the first things that happens is people determine whether this is the right trial for you. And that can be done with a PET scan or additional blood tests, and that information then discussed with the person to say, is this the right study for you? What does it mean? So it's not that we want to hide information from people. It's that we should do it in studies so we can understand what this information means rather than
Mhm.
potentially misinterpreting. There's a lot of blood tests being marketed to people right now, direct to consumer marketing. And I understand that because I believe in free access, but I do worry that when people take them and they don't have the context of what does this mean for somebody like me at my age, my family history, that it can be very scary and misinterpreted. This is not just true of Alzheimer's blood tests. This is true of a lot of other blood tests so I do think right now, if you don't have symptoms, join a research study. That's how we're going to figure this out. And if you do have symptoms, I'd strongly encourage you to talk to your doctor about whether this blood test is the right thing for you or not.
Thank you so much for that, because I think it's important, and our hope is to continue to empower our APT Web Study participants with information that they can use to make decisions about how they move forward as they navigate this environment where there's a lot of excitement, there's a lot of novelty, there's a lot of information coming your way, but some of these decisions don't need to be made now, especially if you're not concerned with symptoms related to your cognition. So, speaking again of cognition, if someone in the APT web study is showing signs of cognitive decline based on their responses to the branch test, what would happen? Will they get feedback that they need? And maybe you can clarify this around the cognitive tests as well. Would they need what will they learn, and how would they receive feedback for early treatment is really the question.
That's a really good question. So right
Mhm.
now in the APT web study and even with Branch, this is different than kind of a clinical diagnosis that if you went to your doctor and had longer testing, more detailed testing where someone could tell you, yes, you have mild cognitive impairment. Right now with the Branch study, since it's only over 5 days, we're mostly looking at how you compare to yourself. So are you learning over time? But we have had a lot of discussions, and again, this happens in our prevention trials where someone comes in and screens and they actually have more evidence of impairment than would be right for this kind of prevention trial. And then we try to refer them to see somebody for a clinical workup. Because I don't think right now a test yet that's done on your smartphone is enough to do a clinical workup and say you have mild cognitive impairment or dementia. Again, I would say that if there's significant concern by anybody, the best thing to do is talk to your doctor. You can start with your primary care doc and ask about this because I feel like we don't ask a lot. And I will also say there's a lot of people, including myself, who are worried every time we lose our keys or we can't find our car. And the good news is most of the time that is not of great concern. And our job in these studies is to really figure out what is that cut point? What is that evidence that says, oh, this person needs to get an evaluation? So right now, at least in this first passive branch, when you're just doing the first 5 days, it certainly would not be adequate to say to somebody, you have decline, you should go to your doctor. But over time, that's part of what we hope to be doing. And in addition to the branch you heard about, one of the things is we ask people all the time, have you noticed a change in the past few months over your ability to, listen to television programs and follow the plot? I never could do that. Or have you had more difficulty? And one important one is, are you repeating yourself, like I probably am now, to your friends and loved ones, telling the same story? So if people tell you that you're doing that, that is of concern. We have enough data to suggest that. But I think right now, most of what we're doing here is more experimental. And our job is eventually to understand how this predicts. So I wouldn't want to make a clinical diagnosis at this point.
Oh, that's terrific. I quickly want to just allude to something that is logistical in nature for APT Web Study. As we approach the last few minutes, we've had some questions related to participating in branch now that you've highlighted this important information. And I just want to emphasize, all you need to do is respond to your emails. You may have received an email asking you to reconsent or accept to participate in the study once more for APT Web Study, and automatically all of your assessments will show up at the right time. And that is to say that for both Cogstate and Branch. And so Branch will be available the moment in which you do that. With that, I would love to close on a very positive note. It's been wonderful to engage with you in this. And I know that I don't want to speak for our audience, but they have enjoyed it as well, given the number of questions that have come through. And I'm so sorry we can't answer all of them. But I would love for both of you to answer on what your thoughts, motivations, or what words you'd like to share with the audience in closing. And I'd like to ask you, Dr. Sperling, to lead, but then for Carol to close us and give those last words in particular to her peers and individuals that are considering getting more engaged.
Well, I want to say that because of people like you who are in these studies, I feel like we are making tremendous progress. And that, again, we really are at a new time in Alzheimer's disease where we no longer think about it as an incurable, untreatable disease that we have to be terribly afraid of. We can do something about this disease with your help, and we can go faster and faster in our progress with your help. So I do feel tremendously hopeful, but I also realize every day that I want to go faster. And I just want to again say how grateful I am to all of you for being part of the APT web study. I love it if more of you sign up for Branch. Every bit of information is good. And also, hopefully, that if there are trials that are right for you, you find out more about them and see if this is the right fit for you over time, because you are the way we're going to get the answers. So thank you. Carol.
As one from the underrepresented community, please, please, please understand how important this disease is in our community. Understand that when you're in a research study, you're protected, you're taken care of, you're valued. What better way to go into a study if you really feel the need, just like Reisa said, if you have different problems. Our community we don't have the data that they need, and we need to get some skin in the game. And the only way we can do that is for you to participate in these studies and stay engaged. Don't get disappointed or turned around. Think about how serious this thing is. It's taken a lot of us away, a lot of our loved ones. We can make a difference just by engaging with the researchers and participating in studies when they come your way. Please, we really have no recourse. We see that things are being done, and they're being done in a very efficient way, and we need to be a part of that. So I just hope that just by listening to this webinar, that you would just go and do your own research, and you will find out that this is the best way to go. I am a participant. I'm staying in the game. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. And I have whatever information you need. If you know me, you know, I'll provide it to you. But we're talking about lives now, our lives. And we need the data for our community. Please join the research studies.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you both so much. If I could applaud, I would, or if I would ask our audience to do so. But a huge thank you to both of you for sharing your expertise, your insights, and your words to encourage everyone to participate in this and any opportunity that is afforded to them related to Alzheimer's disease. Please stay tuned for future opportunities to engage in Alzheimer's prevention research. We are continuing to find ways to create opportunities, activities for APT Webstudy participants. If you are not signed up and you are interested in joining, please visit our website by scanning the QR code or visiting the web link in the chat. We will be holding future webinars in the coming months. Look out for other emails about future events. We also have a survey to capture your feedback from this event, so please visit the survey by clicking the link in the chat. If we didn't get to your question today, please know that we'll be reviewing submitted questions to help guide the themes and topics for our next event. Your questions may be answered in future discussions, so stay tuned. Again, if you have any technical questions with your assessments, need assistance, or are curious on how to participate because you couldn't capture the link, don't hesitate to reach out to us at 1-858-877-3135. And with that, thank you and have a great day. Bye.